Oh, welcome. Welcome to Source Simplified, meeting number 2. Laura, welcome. All of you who join in on the recording, welcome. May you be here with us in your present, which will be our past. And you know how that whole technology thing works. So today we'll begin with a contemplative meditation. And then after that, we'll dive into Q&A dialogue with Laura and I here and whoever else joins, if anyone else joins us live. And here's the really cool part about this contemplative meditation that's begun right now. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to do anything different than what we're already, quote unquote, doing. We're allowing ourselves to be as we are. So you can take that mental checklist of all the stuff that you didn't get done, of all the stuff that you might do later, and just allow it to be there. Even if there's thoughts of completing or not completing. See, the beautiful part about what I'm sharing here is that this is a pathless path. It is the journey home where we don't take any steps to get there, because we're always there. We're never not here. So in that way, talk about a liberating meditation. Instead of focusing our attention, let's say, on, I'm just going to focus on my breath and just, oh man, I can't focus on my breath. Oh man, my mind is racing. Let the breath be what the breath is. Let the thoughts be what the thoughts are. Let the emotions, sensations, and kind of imagine yourself like you're in a movie theater and you're watching a little movie screen. And all of these things are arising and passing on this movie screen. But what is the common element? What is, dare I say, enlightenment? Is it possible that enlightenment is this? And when I say this, I mean the common element, the source of experience itself. That which has seen every situation, thought, feeling, emotion, sensation, relationship, problem, joy, arise and pass. But there's always been a common thread. And if you're anything like me, which from where I'm sitting, we're all one. So I imagine you are something like me. Uh, then you'll know that this source that I'm speaking of, this extraordinary, this is enlightenment. Audacious. How could I say such a thing? Don't we have a journey to go? Problems to solve? A to-do list that never ends, maybe. But what if we go on the whole journey, solve the problems? We're able to focus on an inhale and an exhale for a whole 10 hours straight at a 10-day Vipassana, only to arrive exactly where we are. And I go, what? And then the mind might do this thing where it's like, I have to tell my family. I have to tell everyone. Now I've got to go out and teach and share this. Okay, mind, I see you creating another subtle to-do list. Thank you very much. Your sweet little bodhisattva, you. The mind doesn't like it because the mind at least my mind, it likes to do something. It wants to put in the sweat. And so the beautiful part about the pathless path and what we're sharing in here is that's actually exactly what we're doing. We have gathered today to share in this, to focus our intention, to focus our attention on what we are. To see ourselves clearly, to know ourselves clearly. Some of you may have seen the email I sent out yesterday about this meeting today. I said, we all one. It's that simple. And it is that simple. But does it always feel that simple? The point, if there's a point to this, is that who and what you are, Laura, who and what I am, who and what anything actually is one. It's one. And this oneness, if you follow the source of attention back, and I'm making a concession to words and concepts and saying, like, do this thing, even though it's already what's happening. But that's the purpose of a technique and intention and attention. If we see the source of it, we go, whoa, it's all consciousness, awareness, oneness, love, God, universe, whatever we want to call it. I don't remember a beginning. I don't see an ending. All there is this field. This is what, to speak a little bit about Buddhism, Laura and I were talking about that before the call started. We have the 5 sense doors: touch, taste, smell, sight. What am I missing? Sound. And then we have the 6th sense door, which is thoughts. Thoughts they kind of have their own thing going on there too. But if you look at any time that your experience, and this is what the Vipassana is for, and this is what any training is for, it's ultimately to get to, holy, this is all one. There's no evidence for separation. There's no, sure, we can feel I know that there's a little screen here, and I imagine you could tap on that little screen and feel the tip of your fingertip, but that's not actual evidence for anything being separate. How could there be anything separate? Just, I'm going to end with this, and then we'll open up for our Q&A here. I wanted to make a video all week, but I was too lazy to go find a whiteboard. So I still don't have the whiteboard, but I'm going to just try and visually draw it out with my imaginary whiteboard. And we'll take it from there. So here's my whiteboard. And on the whiteboard, I'm going to draw. By the way, this whiteboard, this is perfect. Imagine the whiteboard as the border of my screen. Okay, so this is the whiteboard upon which I'm going to draw. And even though there's a border to the screen, this whiteboard is representative of the universe, of God, of love, of whatever the real thing is. That's what this is. So it actually means there's not even an edge. There's this edge that you see. The example I'm giving, I'm pointing to the all that is. That's everything. Okay, so it's clear what the whiteboard is. Perfect. So Laura's a teacher, so she can appreciate this. And that, again, Source Simplified. Simple solutions, baby. Here we go. Now that we have the whiteboard, the all that is, God, love, universe, spirit, name it anything you want to name it. Whatever is responsible for us being here and whatever is here now. That's this. Now on that whiteboard, I'm going to draw a circle, a little tiny circle. Let's say the circle is my right eye here. Here's the circle. No, you know what? Better yet, this is perfect because I'm on the screen. Imagine the circle is my body. My body is, and I go, that's what I am. That's me. Here I am. And then there's everything else, right? Now there's me and there's everything else. There's the whiteboard and all the appearances and things. Now we race erase the body. That's what we actually are. So we have misidentified ourselves as a separate, uh, the small sense of the small separate self, that sense that we go, I'm an organism, I got to protect myself from everything around here. And that's true. When you're being attacked by a wolverine or a bear, for sure, that's useful. But is it the ultimate truth? Are we running from wolverines all day, all the time? Kind of how society is. It can feel that way. But the point here is, if we sit with this, if we see this clearly, if we see what we actually are clearly, we'll see this body outline is not what we actually are. What we actually are is the screen. And how could we be anything other than that? And how could there be anything outside of that? If there were any one thing outside of that, it would automatically be inside of it. Because it's the one. There can be nothing else but the totality of our being. And we are that, and we're a part of it. And here's the crazy thing. We are not exclusively the body. So you can redraw the body and say, okay, here's the outline of the body. And it's here. Laura and I have talked about this before. Okay, here's the body, because the body's part of it. The mistake that some people make is the body is removed. Or what we see as the body is removed. And we're like, no, it cannot be the body or the mind. And then we go on the whole horny monk thing where we're rejecting the body and rejecting anger and rejecting our emotions and just suppressing a bunch of shit, which that doesn't help either. So now that we've put the body back in, I'm trying to synthesize like 2,000 plus years of spiritual wisdom, what I hope is spiritual wisdom, into this right now. Now that the body's back and we see, the body is the one, but it's not exclusively. I'm not just this. I am the totality. And here's the really, really cool part. At least to me, it's the really cool part. If your body, your mind, everything that you are over there, Laura, and anyone else that watches this, if that were removed, God wouldn't be God. Universe wouldn't be universe. The one would no longer be the one because you're a part of it and it is incomplete. It's absolutely and totally incomplete without you, what you really are, not the separate sense of, which ultimately the real nature of that would have to be, guess what? What would the ultimate separate self actually have? What would it have to be ultimately? The one! So this is not to spiritually bypass anything. Laura knows this very well. I'm sure many of you tuning in know this very well. The reward for work, as my friend's teacher says, is more work. So let's be very conscious of the sort of work that we do and do it all without being exclusively identified with being the doer. So we could bring more truth, more love, more light, more peace, more joy into every single one of our relationships. And even without us saying anything to the friend complaining to us, or maybe we're the one complaining to the friend, or when you're in public and you hear a conversation, you're like, I cannot believe people are talking about that. But in those moments, instead of us saying I'm spiritually better because I don't complain out loud, but I'm complaining about the one complaining. How wise are we then, right? Without saying anything to anyone about this, we could just look someone else in the eye. And as Alan Watts says, say, I see you, Shiva. I see you, Jesus Christ in disguise. I see you, Buddha in disguise. And thank you for as long as there's something that's my perception of this, for as long as there's something that I'm getting hooked in by, there's my teacher. There's my teacher helping me ground into my sacred yes and ground into my sacred no. And we're all one. And just because we're all one doesn't mean we have to put up with shit. But it actually means the opposite of that. It means we can be the responsible creators of every experience that we have. Do we see it as a teaching and a blessing and a gift? Or do we see it as here I am once again. I didn't choose this. I didn't create this. God would be incomplete without you. So let's just take a few moments. What an interesting, take a few moments. Let's give a few moments to ourselves and let this land. Again, letting it land without landing, because this already is what we are. And in the words of, I heard this from Jack Kornfield, he attributed it to Buddhism. We are all perfect exactly as we are. I'll add on to that and say there's no thing, no situation, no circumstance that is in our way. Every situation, circumstance, obstacle is the way. I'd say the way out is through, but there is no way out. So the way is through. The way is simply through. We are perfect as we are, and there's always room for improvement. Again, that quote, the reward for work is more work. So what I add on to that is we better love what we do, because we're going to be doing it for, well, an infinite, it's instant and infinitely. So we get to choose. Do we want to be the bodhisattva, committed to the awakening, the liberation of all beings, with a frown on our face, going, this is going to take forever until everyone gets here? Or in that moment when we start to identify with that, do we want to be the bodhisattva of unbearable compassion, where there's a smile on our face and we're kind of grinning, and you can't tell if we're about to burst out in tears for the incredible drama that this all is, or if we're going to burst out in tears in compassion and laughter. Maybe somewhere in between. Maybe there's more than two choices here. Maybe there's more choices than fingers that I have. And with that, we've come to the end of the contemplative meditation monologue. Ding! And Laura, as you gently come out of this meditative portion, I invite you to see the difference or lack of difference from this portion to the Q&A dialogue portion. Any questions, anything that you really wish to share that's on your heart? And if there's a story associated with it, that's okay, but just try and stick to the essence of that story and the share. Brother Anthony, good to see you, man. You popped right on at the end. Happy you're here.
Hope I didn't interrupt.
That's not possible.
I didn't think so either. If I'd have known there was a guided portion of this, I would have waited a few minutes or gotten here early. But I saw it and I was like, I'm coming in.
Well, it's guided. Now you're guiding this portion.
Oh.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for being here too.
So a question surfaced during the contemplation And, you know, in our discussion prior to this contemplation, we discussed the idea of busyness and to-do lists and all that stuff in life. And even, you know, struggles happen and hardship. And so, Christopher, you mentioned about being a conscious creator of our lives. And the notion, I'm thinking maybe in dualistic terms, but like, is there a boundary between surrendering to the present moment and what arises and being a conscious player in that whole scenario? So like, it just kind of intrigues my interest or whatever to think about that.
I probably don't know the answer to the question, but I heard this first from Sam Harris and I love it. Think of a movie right now, Laura, and tell me when you've got a movie that you've thought of.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
What movie did you think of?
Grease.
Grease. Okay. Now.
Musical, right? No.
Did Grease the musical. Wonderful.
All right.
Did you go into the library of all the movie choices that you had and go, I think I'm going to think of this one? Or did it just kind of boop,
It
pop
just
up?
Out of nowhere.
Interesting. And how about the next thing you were going to say right now? Where's that coming from?
Good question. I feel like subconscious maybe. And what is my subconscious? I think I see where this is going.
Where do you think it's going?
So being a conscious creator means that 95% of your reality is determined by your subconscious. And so your subconscious thoughts are what puts you on a trajectory that goes in a certain direction. And acceptance or surrender is not meaning that, it is meaning accepting the moment as it is and how it arises. But a conscious creator would be someone who is aware that their subconscious programming determines their reality and therefore will alter their subconscious and their programming in order to change their reality, but also accepts whatever arises within that reality at the same time.
I think I'm following you. I'm going to share with you something that may get us closer to an answer. Maybe not. The essence of what we're talking about here is the source of what you are, of what Anthony is, of what Laura is. And yes, I'm not a postmodernist. I am saying there is, in fact, a fundamental truth underlying everything. I do. And I say we are one. And I boldly proclaim that you're in my oneness. I'm in your oneness. And even if you don't agree with it, that's fine. And that's the really interesting point here. All I know, all I can, from, heroic doses of mushrooms to DMT, ayahuasca, meditations, being with people, all of these experiences, all I know is that whatever this is, I don't even need to split it in conscious, subconscious, unconscious. It's all a complete and total mystery. I just know that there is a kind of a thatness or a suchness to this. And it's a mystery. So anytime I go beyond that, talk about, like you said, thinking in dualistic terms, which, welcome to being a human, of course. It's more of a mystery to me. It's more of a mystery. So I can't say one way or another. It's just a mystery. But that's where I put my faith. And that's where I keep coming back to, which is, okay, here we are in this oneness field. The moment I start getting into like, all right, I'm going to consciously manifest or do something like this, I've kind of, at least I feel, differentiated myself from that field of which I am inextricably connected with. So in a way, I just kind of sit back and here, in a very roundabout way, I think we may have gotten to an answer. I just let whatever happens, but that doesn't mean I'm passive, because it looks to me like this is a very proactive, whatever this is, like whatever's happening, you could drive your car to the movie theater later today, and it really appears like you made that decision to go to the movie theater. So I'm not going to sit there. I think that's the trap that some people in the spiritual realms fall into, and just go, it's God's choosing, God's deciding for me. And subtly they have removed themselves from that mystery, the suchness, and just say, well, I'll just let the fucking, wind blow me wherever it blows, and I'll land wherever forgetting that they're part of that, and they can choose where that leaf lands, or choose what kind of tree they want to be, because they're part of what appears to be a living conscious system. So
hey, what just popped up for me, not to interrupt,
go for it.
but so the notion that you were just describing by being an active player in your reality is the notion of free will and how you choose to experience what arises. So that's a conscious choice.
Yes, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, and our reality as human beings is determined, or our perception is determined by our anatomy and the limitations of that. So an example of that would be, we can only see so many colors within the spectrum, because that's what the anatomy of our eyeballs and our brain and nervous system can interpret from the data that's coming in. So therefore, the oneness that we feel, or that we are sometimes incapable of perceiving, is limited to our senses, because we're receiving information and it's inputting within our system a certain way. And so the exploration is, how do we change our perception to experience the oneness that we already are?
I have nothing to add to that. But Anthony does, it looks like.
If I were me, I would choose it. I would choose to experience the oneness, and in that intention and in that beingness, and allowing the oneness to surface or resurface, or allow myself to remember it, both in my body and in my spirit. I would choose it. That's the level of conscious control, without beating up that word, right? We actually have co-creative ability. Conscious co-creative ability is what we are, what we are made from. So I'm participating in a process that's already done. And I had this image, I think in pictures, like all of us. And in the shower, coming back from the gym, well, I was at the gym taking a shower. The cold shower, right?
You don't have a shower in your car?
The disorienting cold shower after the workout, the deliberate disorientation, right? That's also what we're doing in these spiritual conversations, right? We're deliberately disorienting ourselves from the natural realities, right? Or at least what we perceive as the natural reality. This is your fault, Christopher. Now you got me in a rabbit hole. Okay, ready? Those choices that we make is already, all of them are already done, right? And the image that I got was, because the question that I asked was, where am I blocking the now from coming through? Right? Like, I'm in the shower, I'm closing my eyes, I'm breathing, I'm focused. When I'm in, right, this is a practice that I have. When I'm working out and I go into the sauna and I sit in the men's whirlpool, and then I go into the dry sauna, and then I take a shower, and then it's a cold shower. All these things are very deliberate and mindful practices, right? And I use a lot of this for meditative work, sitting in heat and changing temperatures, right? And so the point of this is, this image that I saw was the image of like a triangle coming down upside down and a triangle pointing upwards, right? They weren't merged, but in the middle there was this pearl. And this pearl was like stuck between these 2 points, right? That middle point between those 2 narrow points where it couldn't quite pass as a rounded pearl. And so I just watched it. I let it sit there. I watched it. I didn't force it. I didn't let it come through. I just asked it, like, what would it take for you to come through? And so when it finally came through, it was like I just watched the sides of the triangles just open up and relax a little bit. Right? It was like they were no longer rigid, but they flexed to that which was trying to come through. Right? And because they were lubricated with intention and with mindfulness, right? Knowing that it's already there coming through. Whatever it is, I don't even know what that pearl was, right? I just saw an image. Whatever that pearl is sure to surface today. That's coming through. But yeah, it's already done. That's all I have to say. That might lead you to questions as well. So I'm sure.
Well, if it's already done, then what am I doing? You know, I want to just highlight this already done piece because you sandwiched your share with that, right? You began with that and ended with that, and I feel like that was the most true. I mean, the meat of the sandwich was the details of how we arrived at where we already were, and that's exactly what we're pointing to here, Laura. Is it's like we're fish. I love the fish analogy in the water, and one fish. And this, by the way, this doesn't mean don't ask questions. I think it's incredibly. This is part of the intention and attention going towards that lubricated crystal coming online and realizing our true nature that we already are. But one fish swims up to the other fish and it's like, do you know where I can find some water? I'm looking for water. I'm trying to get wet. I need it. And the other fish knows that it's in water. And it's like, here, squeeze your perineum, take a deep inhale, go in that cold part of the water over there, go through this whole big effort, and then you'll realize it. You know, and then it realizes, oh yeah, wow, I went through all that. Did I have to go through it? Well, I don't know. You put your focus, your attention, your effort, your intention on the thing to realize I've been swimming around in water this whole time.
Okay, so what came up during both Anthony and your responses came up for me was a few experiences. So one, I had suffered a back injury doing CrossFit, and it was very intensive pain that was relentless and ongoing. And it involved muscle spasms that went all the way down my leg, numbness in that leg, and it was excruciating pain. But one of the things I learned from that experience is that you can alter your perception or mind to, I don't want to say not experience the pain, but experience something outside of the pain. And that is your essential nature. So because of our sensory input, we are so identified with that as being our reality that we don't see anything beyond it. So going into the idea of like cold water therapy and hot like sauna and going back and forth, I feel like those experiences train us to surrender to the illusion of our senses in order to point us in the direction of what is eternal. And that's where we surrender to that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And there's no direction to the eternal but in. It's already written in our hearts. The eternal is inscribed in our hearts, and it's what drives us to seek it, no matter what our experience has been in life of not having it. So it makes sense. And often we can't feel it with our senses. It's a good point.
I love that play on words there. I'm a sucker for that. You know, the book Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. That book I read it 15 years old. They had us read it freshman or sophomore year of high school. And it's incredible to look at what is the difference between the person that is in the concentration camp, and not everyone, but there were people that were experiencing a deep sense of peace in a concentration camp. So to me, they used that experience to realize their true nature, or to see clearly that I can't be exclusively this body and this camp and these people. There's no way. I'm something that is beyond and somehow appearing in this dream. But you know, the difference between them and us, when Laura and I might be going to a sweat lodge tomorrow, and there's a cold lake and then there's a sweat lodge. So we're going to be doing this thing that you're talking about, Anthony. So it's such a great example. But we didn't, no one came and put us in trains and took us to this place and quote unquote forced us to do it. Yet still that recognition can be had even in the worst conditions, which is not that long ago that shit happened, based on what I think comes back to Anthony's original point: choosing, making a choice. And you know what, I want to leave room for the mysterious nature of that thing called grace too. That sometimes it's like I didn't choose to be at peace with this, but there's this mysterious grace that comes over as well. So yeah.
When I met you, Christopher, you it's like 3 years ago, like around this time, I think. And I told Laura, right, if I would have met Christopher and he would have known before he knew what I was going through at the time, right, riddled with cancer, suffering from the worst cancer addiction I could have come up with at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, God give me cancer, right? Like, why shouldn't I? But no, I joke about it because of the seriousness of the conversation. And like, you know, it echoes his point about, if you, like Viktor Frankl, right? You never know, right? Just subject to the torture and the anticipation of what's going to happen, what could happen, what's happening to those around him. You know, I would liken that back to the cancer narrative, right? And I could look around and I could see other people who had the same similar conditions in their body, and their attitude and their energy was nowhere near what I presented with at the time when I met Christopher. Right. So if he didn't know, he probably would have never known that I was sick, right? Because of my energy and my attitude and my choice. And throughout my entire journey for 2 years, that's how I remained, right? Despite the silent suffering. Wasn't much. I was at peace. It hurt, but I was at peace. I couldn't move some days and I was at peace. I couldn't get out of bed some days and I was at peace with it, and it hurt, right? So it's like the duality of things, and it hurt lots of other things in my life too, let alone what I had been hurting from when it happened, right? It's like this compounding thing of like all the things happening everywhere all at once. There's this option every time to like go through the door of like, I'm just gonna be with this, you know, and it fortifies the edges, it fortifies the container, and the more you can be with it, and not be against it. I did a whole thesis on this, but the more you can be with it is where the power is, as it integrates into your being with it. Ooh.
Ooh is right.
Brother.
Thank you for sharing that, brother. Appreciate you bringing that in.
That's a powerful testimony. Powerful.
Because it's real.
Mm.
Right? It's real. It's what was. And I'll remember that experience in my body forever. It's never going to leave my soul. Doesn't mean I have to remind myself of it or dance with it again. It's not a very good dancer.
Mm-hmm.
But I do.
I want to share one piece on the importance of, in my path with this, healing trauma and trauma responses. So I think sometimes I've thought I've been in a place of quote unquote enlightenment. I'm like, I'm good. And then something will happen, and there's a 4-year-old boy crying, not outside me. I don't have a 4-year-old child. I mean, I do, but he lives in this guy, or he did/does sometimes. And what I've realized is I'm actually starting a trauma training. I'm not facilitating it. I'm participating in it to work with more tools and to be able to work with clients more in that arena as well, with this understanding that we're talking about. But this understanding can sometimes be used as spiritual bypassing. It can be used as another way that, now the ego is just the spiritual guru ego or whatever it is, and that's just as not helpful, or maybe even more unhelpful than just being real with, again, to what Anthony said, just being with what is. And so the more I'm being with myself, even with others, weird shit is happening, because there's a new space where in that space I'm like, whoa, I could see the old me that would jump into the fight or sometimes freeze. I don't do much of the flight stuff, but those are the 3 options, right? When trauma arises: fight, flight, or freeze. But then there's a little space where I go into, it's almost like the situation is reenacting itself to let me know in that little space, hey bro, you can choose differently here now. And that feels like that. Why is that space there? 1, I feel grace, and then 2, the continued practice of bringing the truth of being simultaneously healed, and it's already done, and simultaneously on the healing path of consciously getting that done. So there's not a 4-year-old little boy that doesn't know that I'm here. The me, the embodied self is here, who feels unsafe. I want to heal. I want to offer him the knowledge that he is safe everywhere he goes. And so, yeah, these little spaces seem to arise for me to choose. It's that moment where I go, wait a minute. A Course in Miracles says, with the world and suffering and death, that is not something to laugh at. We don't laugh at that because it's not funny, because we think it's really, really real. But when we have greater and greater degrees of awakening, realization, whatever we want to call it, in that space, the Course says Jesus will laugh. We'll laugh at that. And I kind of think of it as like, I'm on this kind of virtual reality, and I get up to the stop point where I kept on like trying to shoot up the thing, and then I just get shot down, and I'm like really tensed up, and I'm about to shoot up the thing, and then I go, I've been here before. I'm not falling for this shit. Nope.
Sometimes that echo chamber is so loud that you can't even get out of it. Right. So it's like, where is the choice? Where is the new choice? You might not be able to see it or feel it. Right. Sometimes the intensity of the echo chamber of the old reality is, even though it's that reality dying, and you having the indicator, right, that it's alive in you and it gets to die, and you get to choose something else. It's like in that space, it's a challenging space, right? Knowing that you have the choice and maybe not being able to see it.
Maybe that's where the surrender element comes in as well.
Surrender and community too, right? Because people see what you can.
Well, it's interesting talking about the topic of inner child. I have embarked on inner child work, and oftentimes, and I'm also a teacher, so I work with children. So oftentimes I see the similarities between behaviors and experiences of my students and then myself as an inner child. And going back to the notion of like laughing, like if Jesus were to see this circumstance and laugh, I would think the laughter comes from the idea of having wisdom and an experiential notion of the eternal, and then seeing the circumstance through the perception of separation or the illusion of separation. And it's kind of funny, like if you really if you can connect the two dots and you're like, okay, so when I see my students, embarking on their emotions for whatever particular thing, I think to myself as a wiser person in my 40s saying, yeah, that would have bothered me too as a second grader, but now I have absolutely no memory of those types of things as a second grader. Like eventually you're going to forget about it and move on, and then you're going to go on to different things. So like, I don't know, like it's pretty interesting. And so going back to that experience and then thinking about things that happen in my life that bother me, I'm sure 20, 30 years from now, I'll look at this circumstance and be like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, you don't need to sweat it. So yeah, it's interesting.
Can we do this as a telethon next time? We can go for like 18 hours.
Absolutely.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I'll have to check in Miss Ladka and see if it's still alive in her. What she wants to do is do a 24-hour world peace meditation. And what that would mean is in 2-hour blocks, there'll be different facilitators, and we just tune in all around the world with the intention of inner peace, trauma healing, being one. And then we're going to pick one place to donate the money to. Any funds that we raise will go to helping relief in Israel and Gaza, Palestine. So that's already in the works, my brother. And
I'm in.
there you go. Even before I asked.
So
Yeah. I want to share on this laughter piece, Laura, that you brought up. I think it can be humorous when we realize, oh, maybe not the big I, but the small I that needed to learn whatever it needed to learn in this dimension, or wanted to learn, dare I say wanted to learn, elected to willingly say, yeah, I'm going to go into this thing and I'm going to learn these things in this way. I'm going to get cancer, for example, in Anthony's situation, and divorce, whatever, all of these things. And I'm going to do it because it's going to be a service to others. And ultimately, I'm going to come to that point and go, I'm not buying into this, because I feel that recognition is somehow like a karmic remembering of how we ourselves, like we have the remembrance of, I set this up for me and for everyone to realize that I'm not exclusively the character in the game. Oh, how loving am I that I would create all of this just to remember. So I think that the humor element, it has something to do with, at least for me, it has something to do with that.
I feel
Wow,
like
I'm clever beyond my own imagination. Clearly, I have a sick sense of humor. Jesus, help me.
I keep going. How long do you want to experience that for? I gotta take a nap, right?
Sometimes I have this idea. Listen to this. You two will love this. I have this idea that every night when we go to sleep, we solve everything. Like we go back to oneness, which is, by the way, quite possible, because in deep sleep we're not dreaming. We're certainly not identified. I don't have a memory of being in deep sleep for like whatever 3 hours of the 8 hours that I slept last night. But where are we then? Ramana Maharshi is like, who are you in your deep sleep? And so what if we solve it all? Like we save the world, end suffering, and And then by the end of it, and by end of it, there not being an end of it because it's infinite and eternal and timeless, but we just get bored again and we go, I kind of want to go fuck shit up. Let's go back in. And then we're back in the body. And actually, in a way, it can come from this sense of like, I love that Christopher guy, or I love that Anthony, or I love that, like, out of all the possibilities, this is what I'm putting forth. Just as a thought experiment. I don't know if it really happens like this, but imagine if we're coming back to this incarnation, this moment, because every single night in deep, deep sleep, we just go back to the infinite. And then every time we're like, oh, but I love Laura, that Anthony guy. It's so like, it's really captivating. And I have this son and this journey and this healing practice. And I'm on these Zoom, what if we just make that choice? And we're like, let's go back in there. And we'll be back here later tonight anyway. And yeah, I play with that.
I love that. I get to go. Thank you, my brother.
Thanks for coming and laughing, bro. So good to see you. I love you so much.
Nice to meet you, Laura. Love you both.
Love you too. Thank you.
Bye for now.
We'll be in touch about that 24-hour thing.
I'm in. God bless.
God bless, bro. What a joy.
Yeah. This whole experience is a nice reminder about trusting in the eternal, because when you surrender to the moment, amazing things happen. So there was no expectations of who was joining and what we're going to talk about, and it just happened.
Oh, like magic.
Right.
So on YouTube, if you're watching, come join us next week. I'm doing this again next weekend, same time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. All are welcome. And I want to share this with you, Laura, because you were you on the world peace meditation with Mila?
Yes.
Yeah. So our brother David was there, and he shared this quote from Ram Dass, and I feel that it's so applicable to my life personally, but also the global situation with different conflicts and 13 species a day down, like lots of different shit seems to be blowing up all over the place. So I don't know what better time to find peace than right here and right now. Ram Dass's guru, I'm just going to paraphrase the story. Neem Karoli Baba would say to Ram Dass when there was a conflict in Baghdad, when he was with him in India, some, I don't know, 40 years ago, maybe more. And he would say, Ram Dass, can't you see it's all perfect? Can't you see? And from his perspective, from Neem Karoli Baba's perspective, apparently he could see how it's all perfect, including the war and the conflict. And that blows my mind. Now, I can't always see how it's all perfect. And so the other quote, I think it's Ram Dass. He says, everything is perfect as it is, including my desire to change it. So my desire to change the world or to create more peace in people's lives and to help in the ways that I help, even though I might not be called to the front lines of a war, or I'm doing what I can do in the ways that I can do it, and in a way that feels really nourishing for me too. Like this feels like Dharma. This feels like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like this, whether it's a one-on-one session, Laura, you've had with me, or a retreat, or anything around this and supporting others and myself, because I'm not excluded from that. It feels deeply nourishing to my soul and does make me come alive. And so a lot of the time, I do want to change the world. I want to share this understanding with as many people as I can for as long as I'm alive, because there is a deep drive inside me where I do feel like, yeah, somehow it is all perfect. And there's no greater desire alive in me than to share that perfection through intention, through attention, through the boat analogy, where there's all these holes. You've heard me share it before, Laura. There's all the holes in the boat, and we're going around trying to plug these different holes, when really the thing, and there's water coming in and the boat's sinking, when really, if we were to have just sat down in the center of the bottom of the boat, there's a big hole, and that's where most of the water is coming out of. So if we were really to have just sat down, some might say that's a metaphor for meditating. I use it as a metaphor for seeing our true nature, for experiencing our true nature. If more people, I feel, can understand this, can connect with the mystery, and again, that's all I'm advocating for people to connect to, is to sit down and to realize this is all one large interconnected mystery. We can call it love, God, universe, spirit, whatever it is. But sometimes, if we're too busy plugging the holes first without realizing that there's an internal place of peace and joy and happiness without opposite, if we don't know that that's there, sometimes it can seem like a wise choice to sit down and relax our nervous system, so it's not so nervous, and to feel the peace. So that's my piece. And thank you for co-creating this again, Laura, for being here second week in a row. Appreciate you.
I do have something to talk about in terms of perfection, and I'll try to keep it succinct. And how, like, atrocities or major life experiences that are traumatic or tragic or anything, how it all leads to perfection. So going back to the idea that I had that back injury from CrossFit, well, at the time I was like involved in CrossFit, powerlifting, training for marathons, Ashtanga yoga, you name it, I was doing it. And I was exercising for at least 3 hours a day, very intensive lifestyle. And yoga for me at the time was more of a physical practice than it was a spiritual practice. But because of that injury, it stopped all of that in its tracks. And I had been redirected towards the spiritual aspects of yoga and meditation and things like that. And had I never had that injury, I would have never been at that Chicago conference where we met, that Kriya conference. And think about how the trajectory of my life has changed in that span of time drastically. So had I not had that injury, I would not have been led down that path that has led me to the place I am today. And thinking about that, like on a collective scale, of how even in wartime and everything, I feel like in the struggle, because when I was in that injury and experiencing the excruciating pain that was relentless and nonstop, and I did not use pain medication and used like alternative methods for my healing, because I wanted to really feel that pain to know what I should be doing to heal myself. I didn't want to mask and numb it. So in that experience, I was so spiritually connected. I think that was the most I was spiritually connected in my life, was experiencing that pain and really trying to find peace and equanimity within that intensive experience. And then with it came spiritual knowledge that I could not have received without that experience. So I feel, and wisdom. So I feel, even in the grand scheme of things, talking about perfection in the midst of war, is that there's this deeper sense of wisdom and knowledge that comes from that experience on a collective scale, because human beings, we tend to go on the path of least resistance. And if that means comfort zone and being completely complacent to reality and not really contemplating these deeper notions, then we're going to be in that same status quo, so to speak. But sometimes you need something to jolt you out of that sense of complacency to really start to look within. And so that's why I believe everything's perfect, because it leads us down a path that's our true alignment to what we're supposed to be, instead of just meandering in a meaningless way. So, yeah.
I so appreciate you sharing this. And it reminds me of Ram Dass. I guess Ram Dass is really present right now for me. And a quote that he says, suffering is grace. Suffering is, he doesn't say suffering will one day lead you to grace. He's saying suffering is grace. Whoa. Wow. I'm not even going to interpret it. I'm just going to leave it there in relationship to the story that you shared. And I'll just share, well, before I close out, yeah. So I'll share this now. Laura knows this, and I haven't really shared too much of it publicly, so this would be really the first time. I'm spending right now a lot of time with my uncle, who is in the dying process. So I'm being with him as much as I can. That's part of my trip here to Cleveland. And to talk about suffering as grace, I'm having some of the most connected, profound moments just being with him. And he says some of the funniest shit too. You know, the other day I said, Uncle Jim, how's your mind? How's your body? How's your soul? I paused in between each question to see if he wanted to answer, because he's just very slow to speak, if at all. And I never know if he's going to say anything. And I said, how's your soul? And he goes, dirty. And we both start cracking up. And, you know, I feel the most, an amount of joy and connection with him more than I do. I'm sure it has something to do with my intention of being there and being with him in the ways that I am. But also there's this spark of the divine alive within him that, to be honest, I feel alive in him more than I do in other people that aren't in the dying process. And so who's suffering there? He seems to be at peace. Other family members are certainly, it's hard. They're my mother and the rest of his siblings. It's their brother, and it can be challenging. It is challenging for them, from what they've shared with me, to see him. And I sometimes have the thought, I'm like, should I feel guilty for enjoying this time as much as I am with him? Of course, I know the answer to that is no, but it's just comes back to that, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And that has nothing to do with plugging up those holes. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. Wayne Dyer in A Course in Miracles. So yeah, I hope to see you again next week here, 12. It's going to be the same exact Zoom link. We'll keep it that way. I'm doing this fully donation based. So in the description to the YouTube video, for all of you on YouTube, there's my PayPal is there. You can also book a one-on-one session with this creation. I'm doing $77 one-time sessions. And you're welcome to contribute in any way that feels good. And the best way, the way that makes this come alive, is your presence being here. So thank you for choosing to be here, Laura, and for all of you who chose to invest your time, all the other ways that you could have, you chose to watch this. And if you have any questions or comments or any insights that come through, please feel free to put it in the comment section on YouTube. And if there's a burning question that you want to bring live, join us next time for Source Simplified meeting number 3. With that, I wish you the clear insight of seeing yourself as a part of the divine, as part of God, as part of whatever that is for you. And I wish that you share that freely and generously with all of your loved ones. Ciao, everyone.